Hey, what's up my fellow YouTubers? Here's a question that really never comes up very often for me, and was kind of a question that my cousin kind of gave me an idea for. So, thank you, Noel, my good cousin who lives just a little bit of ways, by bringing up the topic of Led Zeppelin. And honestly, I'm gonna turn this around on her, and I'm gonna basically just tell you a little bit of things that really inspire me from the musical side of me to why I do the things I do. Starting with my musical likes. First things first. Bands that have inspired me to be a musician really were really heavier bands from the late 60s, early 70s, of the likes of Led Zeppelin, which is one band that really you really can't deny them, because they're one of the founding fathers of hard rock and metal. Black Sabbath is another one that really inspired me growing up, just because they were really, they weren't heavy, but they were really more unique than most of the bands out there. They were kind of the Beatles of the hard rock scene from way back when, because they wanted to talk about witches and the things that most people thought were taboo back then. The Doors, definitely another band that really deserved to be a major influence, because even though some people say that the lead singer was a drunken slob or a drunken imbecile, which Jim Morrison probably was a drunken imbecile, but he was still a genius in a lot of people's eyes. Another band that really influenced me from that era was Pink Floyd, because they really did things in a different way that most bands didn't, and I think that's one band that inspires me to be who I am. Coming on up to when I was, well, real little and started really getting into the hard rock music scene, was the 1980s thrash metal bands like Slayer, Flotsam and Jetsam, excuse me there, Metallica, Anthrax, Slayer, I think I named them once already. Who am I missing? That really was... Randy Rhoads and Ozzy Osbourne was another group that really did things. Van Halen, another great band. But I think they get a little too much credit because of their guitar player Eddie Van Halen, because I think there's better guitar players out there than Eddie Van Halen was, like Yngwie Malmsteen, that really set the pace for guys like him. And another band that came along later in the 80s was Faith No More. Actually, they were around way before, but they were still another band that inspired me, because it kind of had that funk rock slash synthesized sound that I want to say was the nu metal era, before nu metal was even really popularized. And that brings me to why I picked up music, was the nu metal scene, and bands like, actually I should say even the 90s scene, from the grunge to the nu metal era, from the likes of Nirvana to Soundgarden to original Offspring stuff, which they were kind of unique even back then. They were kind of the punk rockers of pop radio. And not to forget to mention, Green Day was another one that really kind of popularized punk rock. And I was into a lot of different styles of music, but what influenced me to play music was actually more like Black Sabbath and Faith No More, Korn, Tool, and a lot of other bands. Deftones definitely was another one that was really, really big for me. And even some of the stuff today really kind of brings me back to the music that really got me into playing. Like bands like Asking Alexandria really kind of did it. Bring Me the Horizon is another one. Of Mice and Men is another one. Pierce the Veil is another one. That brings me back to my punk rock days. But I think my point is, I think I'm so inspired by so many different bands that it's kind of hard to put a label on who's who and who's doing what today. And I love the scene of today compared to, and how much it reminds me of what I was playing when I first started out. From the punk rock stuff of Social Distortion to the Rage Against the Machines and Tool that you see in, and Deftones that you see in Bring Me the Horizon and Asking Alexandria, and not to mention the 80s stuff that you hear from the likes of Metallica, Slayer, and Anthrax, and all these other bands that really kind of popularized thrash. Not to mention Pantera was another one, which, God rest Dimebag Darrell's soul, because I think anybody could really say that, whether you're a guitar player, bass player, drummer, whatever, you were probably inspired by many of these other bands. And I think that's why I floated the way I did. But this has been my little video on my music influences and why I play music. And I think that's what you guys should know, and I want to remind you guys to keep checking me out, my stuff out, and remember to comment, rate, and subscribe, and just, I'll probably have more post-up videos for a lot sooner, and definitely lots more for you guys. So give me questions, man. And I'm out. Thanks for watching. Peace.